For all the latest on the SaWGuy podcast, be sure to subscribe and don't forget that bell icon. Welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. As always, you all know, I am the SaWGuy. Hope you're all having a fun and safe, happy holidays out there, and hope you're staying off of that naughty list. It kind of works out, though, because we're going to be talking about episode 62, Krampus. So if you're like myself and on that naughty list, sit back, relax, and let's get this shit started.
Hello, and welcome to the SaWGuy podcast.
My reign of terror was legendary.
You stutter, bitch.
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
You opened it. We came.
Oh, yes. There will be blood.
Now with Krampus, I think of it as a new modern-day version of Gremlins. I say that because this film, it was supposed to be kind of scary, kind of kooky, but then it also had some kind of comedic dark humor in it, I guess you could say. But with Krampus, it was really entertaining. I thought it was really fun overall film, because it plays a lot off of the whole, folklore of Krampus, which is kind of like the Eastern European kind of thing where, this demon or this creature that works for St. Nicholas, depending on which version you heard of the story, he comes after bad kids. Over the years, it's funny because I remember Krampus, hearing about it around 2012, 2013, and little by little, they started doing Krampus festivals out there in the eastern area, of Europe. And it started to grow. Everyone started talking about the legend of Krampus, and it kind of became Christmas for us horror fans to enjoy. It's like, hell yeah, there's this demon that comes and beats these little kids' ass for being bad. It was pretty cool. And the crazy thing is, it got so popular that eventually Hollywood took notice of it, and they said, okay, we're going to make a film of that. And, for a while, they tried making a film. They didn't know if they were going to go scary. They didn't know if they were going to go kooky with it. The story of Krampus, it's kind of kooky in itself. You can't do something too serious because then you have Slender Man. But with Krampus, though, I was really stoked at how they put it together. They didn't just go and have anybody just jump on this project. They had Michael Dougherty, and most of you guys might remember that name because he did Trick or Treat with Sam. And it was like, holy shit. So, it's kind of full circle with him because he did a Halloween film and now he did a Christmas film. So kind of Tim Burton-ish in a way. But it was really cool the way he put together the story. And it followed a lot of the folklore of it. But I thought at the same time, what was really cool is that they kind of twisted up the story a little bit to affect the movie. And you never see what Krampus really looks like because there's so many different variations of it. Now it leaves to the imagination of what does Krampus really looks like. But like I do in every episode, I'm going to break down the movie for you, throw in all the little tidbits and things you might know, things you might have missed. Watching this film, there was a couple things that I missed and I was like, holy shit. But anyways, what's cool about this film is that it's very true to how a modern day Christmas is. The film opens up where everybody's going shopping. And if you've never been Black Friday shopping before they calmed it all down, it was fucking nuts. It shows the workers, they open the door, people are running through, workers are up on top on the ladder, they're falling down, people are fighting for things. You have security there that are pulling the bad people out. You have security that's shocking other people and shit. It's kind of funny to watch, but to actually go through it and live it. I went through a Black Friday shopping one time at Walmart back in 2011, and I swear to God, it was exactly like this opening of this film, man. But anyways, what's cool about this is that they actually show that this is a big-ass store, almost Costco-like size, and so everyone's all fighting and everything like that. Then they're doing this actual Christmas pageant in the corner, and they also have where you can visit Santa. And it shows these kids are doing the recreation of baby Jesus being born and stuff like that. And one of the kids was the wise man, and the other kid, I guess, was dressed up as a reindeer or something. And they start fighting. It was the funniest freaking thing in the beginning because they're fighting. He's choking the kid out. He grabs a fake snow, throws it in his face. Kind of reminds you of Misery, you know, where he's like, "Here, eat it, you sick, twisted fuck."
Eat it to yourself, you sick, twisted fuck!
And it shows that they're fighting, and the parents get involved in everything. They separate them and stuff. And then now the actual movie starts and follows his family. You meet Max, who was the little boy involved in the fight. You meet his mom, his dad, and his sister. You know, his sister was Beth. You meet his dad, Tom, and then you also meet his mom, Sarah. And they're all pretty big, well-named actors. I mean, Tom is played by Adam Scott, who's a very well-known comedian. Then you have the mom, Sarah, played by Toni Collette. And everybody knows Toni Collette because she's the one that always gives that one fucking face.
And all I get back is that fucking face on your face.
I mean, if she was gonna get famous, it was because of that movie too. But I mean, she's a pretty decent actor in this film as well. But then, you know, you see the whole family, they come home, they're all kind of pissed off, and then Max, he's basically like, hey, are we gonna do Christmas like the way it used to be? And then, you know, his dad was all embarrassed and everything. He's like, no, you can do it yourself. I got a phone call to take for work, you know? And then you see his older sister, Beth, she's already at that teenager stage where she's, you know, all about being on the phone, talking to her boyfriend and all that shit. And then the mom is like, nope, I got things that I gotta do, you know? And the mom was pretty much, she was your typical mom who had to decorate Christmas, kind of like Martha Stewart, had to go all out for it, you know? And then you meet the grandma, whose name is Ami. And the grandma was a sweetheart of this. Because, you know, the grandma saw everything unfold, and then Max comes up to Ami, and Ami's just looking at him. And the funny thing is, she mostly speaks German in this whole film. And, you know, they never explained the fact that how Max knew German, because the grandma, Omi, she would always talk German, and he talked back to her in English. So it was kind of weird. There was a weird dynamic. They never showed him, like, talking German or anything back to her. But anyways, you know, they start talking, and she gives him a gingerbread cookie, and then he's like, oh, thank you. And they start talking about, like, hey, do you believe in Santa Claus? And she's like, yeah, I believe in the spirit of him. And, you know, Omi, she asks, hey, did you finish your Christmas list? And he's like, oh, shit, I gotta work on it. You know, so she's like, get it done, hurry up, you know, because here it's the 23rd already. And as Max is getting his Christmas list ready, you see Beth, she's talking to her boyfriend and everything, and he's like, hey, come over, I only live a block away, we can smoke some pot. I mean, your typical horror film, you gotta have pot in there somewhere. Then it shows Tom sitting in his office, he just got off the phone, he's pouring himself a glass of whiskey. Then it shows Sarah where she's putting up all the Christmas pictures, and she's looking at the Christmas picture and everything, and it was funny because it shows that they're taking a picture with Santa, and Santa's like looking over, like staring at Beth, like at the daughter, and then you see, I think it's funny because they show all their pictures, and none of them are perfect, which I thought was a funny-ass wink to it, because, you know, in real families, when you go and all take pictures with Santa, nothing ever comes out perfect. There's one kid that's screaming, somebody looks the other way, somebody has their eye closed. I thought it was really cool about how they play that whole realism aspect to it. And as they're getting everything all set up, and they're all doing their own thing, then all of a sudden the house starts shaking, and it's known that they have their family coming over. And the family that's coming over is actually Sarah's sister and her husband and their kids, and so they always spend Christmas together. And it's funny because, you know, they fit that stereotype that they're these, you know, people that that are kind of like, I guess you could say almost rednecks, but they're not. It was funny because, you know, the whole house shaking, and you find out later the reason why it's shaking is because, you know, they drive a lifted H2 Hummer and shit. But, you know, as the whole house is shaking, they're all like, oh shit, they're here. And it's funny because if you ever have family come over for Christmas, you hear everybody fighting. Hey, don't push on the doorbell. Hey, stop fighting with your brother. You hear all that shit as they're coming up to the door. They're just like, okay, it's Christmas. It's Christmas. It's Christmas. You know, and then Sarah opens the door. Merry Christmas! And she sees Linda and she sees Howard. Howard is her husband, who's played by David Kirchner. And it was funny because, you know, they both come in. Then they come in with their twin girls, Stevie and Jordan. And then they had the one boy of the family come in. He's Howard Jr., or they call him Howie Jr. And every kid is something different, you know, and it's just like in real families too, you know. So Howie comes in and he just has a straight face, just like, and Max is like trying to talk to him. So hey, like, what'd you ask Santa for Christmas? Like a video game, a toy car? And he doesn't say anything, and it's funny because Beth comes up right behind, dialysis. You know, they're trying to be friendly, and it was funny. And then you see Jordan and Stevie. They're like talking to each other because they're twins. They're all like, oh, look at Max over there. He has a letter for Santa. And they called him Maxi Pad, which is fucked up because his name is Max, and Maxi Pad is a playoff of like the girls' tampons. You know, and it's funny because there are families out there like that. My family in particular is like that. It was funny because they all come in and they're all like, oh, wait a minute, are you missing someone? And they're all like, who? And they're all like, oh shit, the baby. They just had a baby, and it was probably like maybe, you know, under a year, obviously. They never said how old the baby was. And they go back out there and they go and get the baby. And then you hear this old lady, you know, coming in where she's like, oh, Christ, I'm going to kill you if you didn't shovel your walk. I could have broken a hip.
I could have broken a hip out there.
And the lady ended up being Aunt Dorothy, which is, you know, Linda and Sarah's aunt. And she's like, oh, hey. And Sarah's shocked. Everybody has that one relative where they say, don't invite him. Don't invite him. If you come over with them, don't even show up. And Aunt Dorothy was that one. And so, you know, Aunt Dorothy comes in and she's like, wow, it's good to see you. You know, I'll take your jacket. And she's like, well,
So
where's the nog? I need to get married.
I need to get married.
She's like, oh, it's in the kitchen. And as Dorothy walks away, you know, she goes into the dining room area and she's like, Lord, oh my. It looks like Martha Stewart threw up in here. And it's funny because we all have that one relative that's exactly like that. In my family, the character of Aunt Dorothy, the attitude and spunk and everything is totally, you know, my mom. Oh man, it's just funny. I get a crack up of it. And as they close the door, Sarah and Linda start talking, and Sarah's like, what the hell? How come you didn't tell me? And she's like, well, it was a surprise, and you know, what was I gonna do? We went to go and pick up some Christmas presents from her, and she was already at her driveway with her suitcase and everything. I couldn't tell her no. And she's like, well, you know, hemorrhoids are a surprise. This isn't a surprise. This is a goddamn nightmare. And so they're kind of bickering. She's like, oh no, she's changed. I mean, you know, we're gonna have a good time. And so now it shows that they're all sitting at the dinner table. And like any crazy family at a dinner table, it doesn't go too well. You know, they're all sitting at the table, and then you hear Tom talking, and then Howard, he's kind of like an asshole towards Tom because, you know, he thinks that he's better than Tom, and that kind of attitude. And, you know, they start talking about, like, their Boy Scouts and stuff. He's like, oh, yeah, your Uncle Tom here, he was busy with life. And he's like, yeah, I was Eagle Scout. He goes, Eagle Scout, boys. That's where you help old ladies cross the streets. You know, just being an ass in ways. And as that's going on, you know, they start talking shit about Sarah's cooking. And they're like, well, my bird is kind of dry. And, you know, then you hear Aunt Dorothy where she's like, yeah, what kind of Christmas dinner is this? You don't have ham? What are you now, a Jew?
Jew?
Shit, man. That scene right there just killed it for me. I was on the ground laughing just because it was just like the way that she was so real with it. Because, you know, there is family out there, like I said, that does that. And as they're all arguing, she's like, all right, well, I guess, you know, you guys wouldn't mind if I had macaroni and cheese with hot dogs. And, you know, then her sister's like, well, yeah, that's what we're used to, you know. And so she's like, I'm gonna go make dessert. And as she's making the dessert, Aunt Dorothy goes back there and she goes, what's up with this fancy food? You know, it clogs my pipes. And then Sarah's just had enough. She's like, you know, with all due respect, just stay the hell out of my kitchen. When you go ahead and take a whole long time to decorate your house and everything, then we'll go over to your trailer and talk shit about it. You know, she just had enough of it. And she's, you know, cooking up creme brulee with the blowtorch and everything. And as that's going on, they're back at the table. And Jordan and Stevie, they're fucking with Max. And, you know, they call him, hey, Maxie Pet, we know that you believe that Santa's real. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, because he doesn't want to look stupid in front of his cousins. And so they're all like, yeah, his reindeer crashed and Santa had to eat him. You know, they're just being stupid. You know, stupid kid things. And then they said, well, we know it's true because we found your letter. And then that's when he tries to jump up. And they're all like, oh, let's read Santa Claus's letter. Let's see what Maxie had won. And they start reading the letter, which is kind of fucked up because Max put a lot of personal emphasis on it. And, you know, they start reading it and they start saying, you know, like, oh, dear Santa, we really need you this year. That's where her sister's trying to get involved and she's like, hey, knock it off, guys. And she's like, oh, wait a minute.
Steve,
Beth, this is the best part. This is about you. And then she reads off the fact that, like, hey, Max wishes that him and Beth would be able to hang out like they used to, like brother and sister. And then that's when, you know, they start talking about Max's parents, where he's like, I wish my mom and dad would just fall in love again. It's just my dad's always working and, you know, do him a favor and make them fall back in love again. And then that's when Howard looks at Tom like, oh, shit, you know? And then that's when he starts talking about Howard and Linda, and he's like, and while you're helping out my parents, can you help out Uncle Howard and Aunt Linda? You know, they need some help money-wise, you know, towards your end. And then all of a sudden, Howard's like, oh, shit. Then he turns around and looks at his wife, Linda. And they're just like, what the hell is going on? And, you know, Stevie, you know, she still keeps reading the letter. And it said something about how the twins, Stevie and Jordan, he's happy that they're girls and not boys because their dad wished they were boys. And then she puts the letter down. Screw you, Dad does not wish we were boys. You know, the crazy thing is, it's sad is that it was very personal, and Max was like ready to bawl in tears. And then all of a sudden the mom comes through, you know, Sarah, she's like, who wants creme brulee? And then that's when Max gets up, and they had this whole scuffle and fight where he's like, give me the letter, give me the letter. He gets the letter back, they're fighting back and forth. And, you know, that's when the family gets involved, they break him up, and then Max is just, you know, he lets loose and lets everybody have it. He's like, well, I want a Christmas the way it used to be, but I guess that's too much to ask for. I hate Christmas. F you, you know, that kind of attitude. And as he's running away, everyone's just like, oh. And then Dorothy comes in, she goes, leave him alone. You know, kid deserves a medal for speaking the truth. Pretty crazy shit, you know, because I can vouch for myself, something similar like that has happened. But, you know, now it shows that Max is in his room. He's, you know, looking at his letter and everything, and he's kind of tearing up because it was a fucked up situation. His dad comes in there, and then, you know, his dad's like, hey, you doing okay? And he's like, why do we gotta have him here? You know, why do we gotta go and share Christmas with him because we share DNA? And, you know, what's cool about Adam Scott's character as Tom is that he was like that real chill dad where he's like, well, I don't understand it either, but, you know, they're family. That's what families do. And, you know, granted that they may be mean to you and say some stuff, and he's like, Uncle Howard, Uncle Howard being an asshole or something like that. He goes, I'm not going to mention any names. But then he tells his son, Max, you know, like, hey, you know, that's just family. And he tells him, hey, there's still time to mail out that letter to Santa Claus. Go ahead and finish it up. Call me if you need anything. And so he walks away. And Max is kind of thinking about it. He puts the letter in the envelope, then he looks at it, and he's starting to tear up again. Then he was just like, no, fuck it. Rips it all up, opens the window and throws it out. And what I thought was pretty cool is that this is kind of a Home Alone wink to it, you know, because he opens the window, throws out the letter, it gets sucked up into the moon, and then all of a sudden you start seeing like little Home Alone references, like the brick house and everything, and it zooms out, and then all of a sudden this thunderstorm comes in, and that's when all the lights start shaking, and you see the fucking wreath that's like shaking all around and stuff. I mean, that was a cool callback to Home Alone. I didn't know that until all of a sudden I was watching this film, and then you see all these Christmas films during the holidays, and it's like, oh shit, that's a wink to Home Alone. Then it's morning and the next day, and then Max wakes up. He has an advert calendar, like one of those old school ones from Germany, and he opens up on the 23rd, so now it's the 24th. He looks out the window and he sees that it's like hella snowing. And, you know, he goes downstairs and everyone's all arguing because his dad can't get the power back on. And they're one of those new modern homes where they don't have fuse boxes. They have actual switches. And so he's switching everything around. And that's when Sarah starts complaining, well, what am I going to do? You know, I got 12 people in the house with no water, no electricity, and there's not much we can do here. And then all of a sudden Howard comes in and he's digging through the fridge, already food. And Sarah's like, well, there's plenty of leftovers. He's looking around, he goes, here it is. It's kind of funny, you know, because he was talking so much shit about her cooking and everything the night before. And so they were just kind of like bickering and everything like that. And then Max is looking out the window and he's telling his parents like, hey, there's a snowman out there. Somebody must have built it like within the blizzard, because there was no blizzard the night before and there's a blizzard today. So they don't know who the hell did it. All of a sudden, what was kind of weird in the story is that they hear a knock at the door. Then you have Linda going and answering the door, and it ends up being like one of the delivery guys. And he's delivering like a basket or something. And as she's talking, she's like, oh, well, what's this other package right there? And he's like, oh, it's not for me. It's from probably the boys in brown. And I thought it was kind of funny because they couldn't say UPS. So they said the boys in brown. Kind of a funny little wink. And then that's when she calls Howard over. And she's like, Howard, I need help, you know, carrying all this stuff in. And then he's like, damn, how come all the rich people get all the free shit? Linda was like, well, maybe because it could be the Democrats. I mean, just funny-ass dark humor with this, man. You know, and they just went off the wall on it. And so as they come in, they bring in all the stuff. Beth comes up to her parents and she's like, hey, I haven't gotten an answer from my boyfriend. It's been like 5 hours and something must be up. And they're all like, well, you're not going down that blizzard. She's like, well, he only lives down the street, down the block. So I want to go and check out like what's going on. And they're trying to tell her like, hey, the cell phone towers are down. I've never personally been in a snowstorm myself, so I don't know if that's true or not. But I'm pretty sure it is. But anyway, she finally convinces her parents to say, hey, it's just down the road. I'll be back within probably an hour. And they said, okay. And and if you would have saw the blizzard, you would have said, hell no, your ass is locked down here. But they let her go out in the fucking blizzard. And as she goes out of the blizzard, they think that Omi, the grandma, is kind of going crazy because she's in the fireplace. And, you know, she's messing with something because it shows her from the back view. And then all of a sudden she pours out, you know, this old canister, and she starts pouring, you know, hot chocolate in the cups. And then she says something in German, and then Max says, well, Omi says hot chocolate makes everything better. And so, you know, that's when you see Sarah like, oh, okay. Now it follows Beth, and she's walking through this fucking, you know, snow blizzard storm. And it's crazy because you can't see shit in front of you. And she's walking through all this whole blizzard. And as she's going through, you know, it's all light and bright and everything. She gets closer to the end of the street, and it gets darker and darker and darker. And as she gets closer towards the end of the street, she sees that there's a delivery truck that delivered the stuff. And then all of a sudden, you know, she goes and looks in the window, and she sees the guy was fucking frozen shut, just like, ah! And she starts freaking out, and she turns around and looks on top of this house, and she hears this sound. And then all of a sudden, you see this big-ass creature jumping from house to house. And it sounds like a fucking werewolf mixed with a lion with the way he's growling. And then all of a sudden it starts howling, and she's like, oh shit! And so she starts running. And as she's running, you know, then you see, and you find out that it's actually Krampus. And he's running between houses on top of each roof. Doop, 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 doop. And she's running and screaming. And she's like trying to get away, and she can't. And so when she finally gets to the end of the street again, and she sees the delivery truck, she gets underneath it. And that's when she's like trying to hide out and everything like that. And this is where you see Krampus kind of fuck with her. You know, he jumps right next to the truck and he stomps his feet. Doom, 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 doom. And then, you know, he jumps again. Boom, on the other side. Doom, doom, doom. And, you know, he's looking around, and then finally he takes off. And it looks like he jumps on top of the van. And all of a sudden, Beth turns around and she sees that there's this Jack-in-the-Box. And this Jack-in-the-Box is slowly turning. Doop, 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 doop. And it stops. And then all of a sudden it pops up. And you see this little creepy-ass gesture come out. And all of a sudden, that's when she starts screaming. And then it doesn't show anything, but it shows underneath the whole van is moving. As she's being, like, slaughtered and tortured. Which I thought, like, oh, shit, that's creepy as hell. Now that it's slowly getting darker, and now it's getting darker kind of all over, they're back at the house. And it shows that Sarah and Tom, they're talking. They're like, hey, it's been longer than an hour. Like, what the hell's going on with Beth? They're like, oh, no, Beth is a big girl. She can handle it. And that's where Sarah's like, no, you need to go out there and look for him. And that's when Tom's like, hey, Howard, you want to go help me go look for Beth? We're just going to go down the block. And that's when they were just kind of discussing things, plans of what they were going to do. Ami comes up, and Ami is actually the mother of Tom. And so she starts telling him in German, like, hey, be careful, you know, just make sure that you're bundled up and everything. You know, the typical mom stuff. And as Tom is leaving, you see Omi, she's nervous of something. And you see that her hand is like super shaking, and Max notices it, so he goes and holds her hand and kind of cuddles his grandma. And then eventually it shows that Howard and Tom, they're in Howard's H2 Hummer. And it was fucking funny because, I mean, he's like the typical, like, pro-gun kind of guy where he has a fucking Hummer and he has like the AM radios and shit, and, you know, he's bragging about how he keeps his shotgun with him. And it's funny because they're driving around, they're kind of talking small talk about everything, like, you know, hey, we're gonna go and try and find my daughter. He's like, hey man, she's a tough girl, you know, and, you know, don't worry about it, you got nothing to worry about, you got me helping you. And that's when they pull up and they see that the snowplow is down, and they said, oh shit, this is something weird, you know, because the snowplow is blocking the street. So they get out of the car. And then that's when he opens the trunk, he pulls out his shotgun, and then he pulls out this .357 Magnum, this revolver. And it was funny, he gives it to Tom, and Tom is like holding it like this, and he goes, it's a little heavy. Yeah. And he goes, yeah, I know. He goes, it's Linda's. It's Linda's. And as they grab their guns and gear and everything like that, they go and check on the snowplow, and they're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, hey, like, you know, did this guy fly out? Did an accident? And Tom's like, no, it's broken from the outside in. And that's when they decide to go inside Beth's boyfriend's house. And they're looking all around. And when they see everything, it's like all frozen shut. And they see a picture of Beth and her boyfriend, and it's smashed. And he's looking at it just like, oh, like all pissed off and worried. And that's when Howard's like, hey man, she's a tough girl. You know, we'll be fine. And as they start hearing noises, you know, they look down and they see that there's these big ass hooves from Krampus. And they're like, damn, that's a big ass hoof. You know, I've hunted animal before, and I've never seen a hoof that big that walks upright. And so that's when they start hearing noises, and they say, fuck it, we gotta get back to the car. So they're getting back to the car, and as they get back to the car, like, it's even worse out there, the blizzard. And that's when they see like this underground monster, kind of like Tremors in a way, you know, where you see like it's coming up through the snow, and then it grabs Howard, and then it pulls Howard. He's like, hey, Tom! Oh! And he's getting tossed around back and forth, kind of like Tremors. And then Tom comes up, and he shoots this monster, after he fights fucking Howard. They go up to the Hummer and everything, and then that's when he looks at the Hummer all tore up, and he's like, Lucinda! Lucinda was the name of his H2. And if you're a typical guy, you know, kind of like myself, you have a name for all of your cars. And it was funny because, you know, that's where they're like, oh shit. So they actually have to go and walking back and everything. And as they're walking back, now it's back at the house where they're all kind of discussing like, hey, what the hell's going on? And Omi, she kind of knows what's going on in a way, but she kind of doesn't, and she's suspecting things. And then, you know, as the kids are kind of like getting worried about stuff, they're like, oh yeah, you know, it's nothing. And they hear a noise where it's like on top of the roof. Boom! And, you know, that's that's pretty much what Sarah's like, oh, it's just a squirrel up there. You know, and Aunt Dorothy's like, yeah, that's a squirrel playing with his nuts.
Probably playing with their nuts.
And then all of a sudden the door opens up and the blizzard's coming through. They see that, you know, Howard's all fucked up and everything, and Tom, and they start talking about everything. And Tom's like trying to keep Howard cool, like, hey, not in front of the kids, not in front of the kids. And that's when Aunt Dorothy takes the kids to the kitchen, and she shows them how to have coffee with peppermint schnapps.
Sugar?
And she's like, a little dash of sugar and spice, everything nice. And she drinks it. And it's funny because then you see, you know, Howard Jr., he's like staring at her, and she's like, I can't give you it. And she's like, all right, but keep your damn mouth shut, all you kids. So, you know, it's funny because she gave a fucking, like, adult beverage. You know, like I said, there's always that one family member in the family that does that shit. And as, you know, she's taking care of the kids, you see Omi, she's in the kitchen, you know, and then Max is kind of watching over her. And that's when they're kind of discussing about, hey, what the hell are we going to do? And he's like, well, I don't know what the hell's going on, because they took care of Lucinda. I only got a couple rounds left in my shotgun. And that's when Tom starts thinking about the story that Omi had always told him about the story of Krampus, where you got to keep the fire hot. So he's messing with the fire pit and everything, and he's like, oh shit, all right, so we gotta come up with a plan to do something. And as they're discussing that, they're all like, well, what are we gonna do? There's all these little creature monster looking things. And then that's when the kids come in, and they're all like, yeah, how much did you hear of that? And Dorothy's like, they had enough. And, you know, it's crazy because then now the kids are starting to get scared. And then you see Jordan and Stevie going up to Linda like, hey, you know, are we going to be okay? Are we going to be okay? And, you know, Linda's like, oh, nothing's going to happen. It's Christmas. Nothing's going to happen. You know, you guys go get your iPads. We'll watch some movies and everything like that. And, you know, that's when Tom is talking to Sarah and saying, hey, she is a tough girl. We'll stay out here. We'll board everything up. And so they get a bunch of wood and everything. They board everything up. The kids are watching the iPads and stuff like that. And that's when, you know, Tom and Howard, they kind of had like a sit down. And Howard's like, hey, I'm sorry for being an asshole all these years. You're a good dude. Thank you for saving my ass back out there. You go be with your family. I'll watch on point. And he's like, you sure? He's like, yeah. So it's a couple hours later, and it's funny because now you see Howard's the first one to fucking fall asleep, and he's supposed to be watching guard. And then it follows the camera like onto the family and everything. They're all knocked out, asleep. Their iPads all fucking died down. And then all of a sudden, that's when the fire dies down, and it's just coals and amber and ashes. And it's crazy because all of a sudden now they start hearing noises, and you see this chain drop down, and there's a gingerbread like cookie on it. And you know, this gingerbread cookie's like talking like, hey, you know, shaking the chain and everything. And then Howie Jr. wakes up, and he's looking at this chain like, what the hell? You know, and he's thinking like, okay, everyone's asleep. Maybe he's dreaming, you know? And then all of a sudden he pulls his chain out and he sees this gingerbread cookie. And he looks at this gingerbread cookie, and instead of like doing anything with it, the kid eats it. You know, he bites the fucking head, and then the gingerbread, you know, cookie comes alive like, ow, ow! Gets all pissed off, and then jumps around him with the chain, wraps them all up in the chain. And then, you know, he gives the signal call, and then all of a sudden, that's when the chain pulls Howie up into the fireplace. And, you know, it was crazy because then everybody all wakes up. So you see Sarah, she grabs Howie, then you see Tom, then you see Linda and Howard, and they're all being pulled all the way up in the fucking fireplace, and they're being dropped back down, dropped back up, and then all of a sudden, Linda, she sees like the gingerbread cookies alive, and she's like, ah, let's go. And then you see Howie gets all sucked up in the fucking, you know, chimney. Howard comes in, he's like, Howie! Looking up, and it was funny at this scene because now it shows that the kid was wearing like a Chuck Taylor that dropped down and smacked him right in the fucking face. I mean, it was kind of a surreal, like, dark humor kind of funny moment, and then that's when they're like, fuck, I should have stayed awake. I was the one, it's my fault. You know, I fell asleep. And after everything has happened where Howie gets sucked up and they're all kind of arguing with each other, a log comes down from the fucking fireplace and then hits the tree. And as you all know, real Christmas trees, they dry up quick and they catch fire super fast. So their tree catches on fire and they're all freaking out. So Max goes and gets the fire extinguisher. They put it all out and everything. And they're all kind of looking at each other like, what the fuck just happened? And that's when Omi comes in, and I don't know what she does, but she does something to the fireplace, and then all of a sudden it goes woo, and it's back alive. And that's when she starts telling the story, I know what's going on. And that's when everyone's like, what the fuck, we can't understand her. And then she starts talking English. And the funny thing is, you know, you see Aunt Dorothy, she goes, English, I knew it, she spoke it. But then anyways, you know, Omi, she starts telling the story about how when she was a little girl living out there in Europe. And she said that, you know, as a kid, she had lost the spirit of Christmas because here she was a kid, she went to go and get food for her family. And people, you know, they were suffering from not having food and everything. It was poverty. And she gets the bread. Everyone fights for the piece of bread. And she ends up going home. And her family yells at her about, you know, hey, how come you didn't get the bread and everything? And, you know, they took her doll, they ripped it up. And that's when she kind of lost the spirit of Christmas. And she kind of wished, like, hey, I wish Christmas wasn't around. It just brings out the worst in people. And the doll that they had ripped was actually a Santa doll. And, you know, instead of actually keeping it, trying to fix it, she grabbed her Santa doll, went to the fireplace, throws it in there. And as she throws it in there, it's basically the same signal where it calls for Krampus, where all the ashes go up in the chimney and everything. And she tells the story that she was asleep in her bed, and she was hearing that Krampus and his helpers had came and was taking her family one by one. And when Krampus came up to her, he didn't take her. He basically left, you know, the reminder that, hey, you know, when you lose the spirit of Christmas, like, I'll take everything around you and make you suffer for it. And, you know, as he was leaving, he gives her, you know, the little ornament bell that's off his chains that says Krampus. And, you know, then he goes up into the fireplace and everything. And so she's sitting there crying. And then that's when it goes back to Omi, and it shows that she pulls out the ornament and says, this is what's going on. And everyone's just like, whoa, you know. And then Howard, he doesn't want to believe it. He's like, this twisted fairy tale shit, like, there's no way that this could be real. There's none. So Howard, he kind of has I guess you could say a meltdown, because then he takes off all the blocks, and they're trying to tell him, hey, don't go outside. Then he points the gun at Tom, and he goes, Tom, I just barely started liking you. Don't get in my way now. He opens the door, and then you see all the snowmen of everybody that Krampus has already taken. He's like, Howie! Looking all around, and then you hear like these little laughters, hee 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 hee, of like little elves and shit. And all of a sudden they pull him back in, they closed everything up, and then, you know, they start discussing about what they're gonna do. And then it shows that it goes back to the advert calendar, and then now it's actually Christmas Eve. But it's still dark as shit! Now that it's Christmas Eve, they start discussing all their plans how to get to that truck with the plow. And as they're all discussing and everything, mapping everything out, you see that Linda, you know, she's in another room and she's wrapping all of the Christmas presents for her kids. Kind of having a moment about things because they took Howie and everything like that. As she walks away, you know, she starts talking about the whole plan about how to get to the truck. It goes back to the presents, and the presents are shaking because, you know, they're in that special Christmas bag that was delivered to them. And as that's going on, then you hear the kids where Jordan and Stevie, they said, oh, we need to use the bathroom. They're all like, well, you got to use the one upstairs. And Aunt Dorothy's like, I clogged the one downstairs. Oh, shit, man, that was funny. And so they're going upstairs looking for the bathroom. And as they're going up there, they start hearing this voice. And it sounds like Beth's voice. And, you know, they're saying, hey, Jordan, Stevie, I've been up here the whole time. Come up here. So these kids, they follow the voices going upstairs. And they go in the attic, and then all of a sudden you hear these screams and everything. So they grab whatever they can, an axe and shit like that. And they run into the to the living room, and they're like, where the hell are the kids? Where's the twins? And Aunt Dorothy's like, well, they had to use the bathroom. So you let them go? Well, was there another choice? And so as they go up the stairs, they start hearing all the noises and everything. Max is staying by Omi. Howard's staying behind. And they start going upstairs. And as they go upstairs, they start hearing all these rustling noises and everything. And Howard, he starts hearing noises in the kitchen. And so Howard, you know, he's trying to call his dog because they brought the dog with them. And the dog was Rosie, who's a French bulldog. And it was funny because, you know, he's calling Rosie. He's like, Rosie, come here, girl. And, you know, she ran away, and he goes, useless turd. So there's two scenes going on. You have Tom, Sarah, and Linda going upstairs to check on the sound that's going on. And you have Howard that's going in the kitchen checking on that sound too. And, you know, while that's going on, Howard, Linda, and Sarah, they're upstairs. They start hearing all these noises, and all of a sudden, you know, that's where they hear like the Jack in the Box, doo, 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 doo. And they have the flashlights on this jester, and this jester's like eating one of the kids, and you see the end of their boots like, and he's swallowing it, and they're screaming, oh my god, And they're like, what do we do? What do we do? What the fuck is that? And then that's when, you know, Sarah's like, just shoot it, for the love of God, shoot it. So they start shooting at it, and this Jester freaks out, starts running all around, and then gets to the end of where there's like a vent, and it's like trying to fight its way to get out. And you see this robot toy jump on Tom, and he's like stabbing him. He's like, you gotta be fucking kidding me! Ah! You know, he's getting stabbed by this little robot. This fucking teddy bear that looks like something from Five Nights at Freddy jumps on Linda, and then there's this like weird deranged looking angel thing that kind of reminds me of like their angel that they had on top of their Christmas tree that jumps on Sarah. And it has this long tongue, and it's like swinging the tongue around, like trying to get in her ear and everything. And the typical Toni Collette thing where she's screaming and makes that face, ah! Ah! So they're all fighting with that. And as that's going on, now it goes back to Howard, where he's, you know, looking through the kitchen because he hears these noises. And all of a sudden, that's where he gets shot in the leg by, you know, all these nails from the nail gun. And he turns around and sees his 3 gingerbread cookies, like, laughing. And that's when he's like, what the fuck? And he's like, I should have gone to my brother's for Christmas. You know, and he's running all around, like, trying to get out because they're shooting these fucking nails. Choo, 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 choo. You know, he gets at the end, you know, he picks up the cutting board. Choo, 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 and they, you know, shot nails through it. And then that's when, you know, it goes back to Tom, Linda, and Sarah. And Linda was a tough one, you know, because she fights back, and all of a sudden, you know, she sees this icicle, breaks it off, stabs it right through the teddy bear's eye, and throws him off the fucking stairs. After she takes care of the teddy bear, then she picks up the axe, and then she sees that her sister Sarah's hanging, like, off a noose and shit from Christmas tree lights, which I thought was a cool little wink to Black Christmas. She cuts off the lights, so then all of a sudden Sarah falls down. And, you know, she beats up on that little crazy-looking angel thing. And then that's where Tom's like on the ground getting stabbed by this metal robot. Turns around and he's like, ah! She fucking knocks the shit out of that. And then all of a sudden she sees the Jesters like trying to get through the air vent. She goes, give me back my kids, you mother! And she slams down the axe and it already got inside the air vent. And as that's going on, where she's like, Jordan! Stevie! You know, like screaming for her kids. It goes back to Howard, where he's fighting off these gingerbread cookies. And then all of a sudden, you know, they run out of nails and they start bickering with each other. He pulls out his shotgun and shoots the lantern and they blow up. So you see one that's on the ground, like already charred up and everything. And he's like, Merry Christmas, motherfucker. And then 2 of them that are still around, they're like, there he is, get him! So they start running, he takes out one, and then all of a sudden the other one comes like flying at him in slow motion with the candy cane with a sharpened point. You know, just going, ah! And he's like screaming, and he closes his eyes. And all of a sudden, Rosie comes in and fucking eats the gingerbread cookie, and he starts laughing. And he's like, good girl, good girl. The cool thing, though, about the gingerbread cookies, they were actually voiced by Seth Green and Justin Roiland. And I thought it was a cool little wink to that, because Seth Green, he has Robot Chicken and everything like that. And you see a Robot Chicken poster inside Max's room later on. And, you know, Justin Roiland, he's the voice of Morty from Rick and Morty, and also Rick. And they both did the voices of all the gingerbread cookies, which I thought was pretty cool. Well, that's all going on. Then you see Tom and Sarah, they start talking and everything. And that's when the little toy robot comes up like, ugh! And Sarah grabs the fucking revolver and she fucking blows it away. Boom, 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 boom. Tom looks at her like, what the fuck? And she goes, what? I took care of it. They all come downstairs in the living room. And then they all start saying, well, what the hell happened upstairs? That's when Howard comes in and he starts telling his wife, he goes, Linda, if you knew about how I got my ass kicked by gingerbread cookies, you knew I understand what the hell's going on. And as it's all going on, that's when they start saying, like, hearing noises. And they start hearing noises all in the attic. And they thought, well, you know, the Jack-in-the-Box, he's stuck in the air vent. And they're all like, well, we can't get out. We boarded everything up. So you hear it screaming the whole time. And then that's when Max is like, oh, shit. So Max had the idea of opening the air vent and letting Rosie go in there. And they're like, yeah, go get him, Rosie. Then you hear the dog, like, fighting with the Jack-in-the-Box. And the Jack-in-the-Box comes down. Boom! Like, right in front of him in the living room. And then that's when the monsters that you thought they killed off upstairs, they come back down. And that's when the teddy bear is like trying to fight with them, and then Aunt Dorothy blows away. Boom! Then you see like the little angel creature like trying to come after him. Then Aunt Dorothy blows it away with the shotgun. Boom! Lands right on the center of like the wreath. It was kind of a cool little wink. And then it drops down. And Tom turns around, looks at Dorothy, and he says, Aunt Dorothy, finish it with pleasure. And then as she aims it at the Jack-in-the-Box, you know, he's looking all around like, oh no, don't kill me. Then he starts clapping his hands. And as he's clapping his hands, that's when they're like, what the hell's going on? And then Omi was the only one that knew, where she's like, elves. And all of a sudden, you know, Dorothy turns around at the boarded up window and she goes, oh shit. So all these elves, they break through the fucking window, and they kind of corner everybody like into a corner. And while the elves are in, they're all kind of tormenting and fucking with everybody. They got them all to a corner, and that's when Linda's like, "Where's the baby? Howard, where's the baby?" So one of the elves grabs the baby and walks out. And all of a sudden, Howard's like, "This fucking twisted fairy tale horse shit." You know, he jumps out and jumps right on top of the jester as they pull the Jack-in-the-Box out. And then all of a sudden, they grab the chains and they wrap it around Aunt Dorothy. Aunt Dorothy's just sitting there and she goes, "I'll see you in hell!" And then they pull her out. Woo! And as that's going on, that's when they hear noises and shit. And all the elves are like, "Oh, shit." And so they all run out and everything. That's when they all break away, and that's when they say, "Shit, we all need to get together. We need to go out to that plow truck. We need to do it now." And as they're all arguing about that, then you see Omi where she's like trying to light up the matches, and then they keep blowing out and everything. And then, you know, that's when Tom is like, "Mom, we gotta go! We gotta go!" And then all of a sudden, that's when you hear the Christmas music and electricity kind of coming on and off. And you hear, you know, "Here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, right now Santa Claus Lane." And it was basically a wink saying that Krampus was coming. And so they all geared up and everything and got all their fucking coats on. And as they're leaving, Tom says, "Okay, we all stick together, arm in arm, you know, follow my lead." And that's when everybody's all leaving. And then that's when Max is at the end. Then all of a sudden, you know, he turns around and he sees that Omi's like, "Be good, Max." And she closes the fucking door. And Max is like, "Omi! Omi!" And then all of a sudden, Tom goes and knocks on the door. "Omi! Mom! What are you doing? What are you doing?" And then Max has to tell his dad, like, "Hey, she's staying behind. She wants to face him. She wants to face him." And so he's like, "Oh shit, she's buying us some time." So Omi sacrifices herself to Krampus, so that way they had enough time to get out. And as Omi goes back to the living room, you know, that's when everything starts to freeze over. Shh. You see all the cracks on the fireplace come down, and you finally get to see Krampus in person. And he comes down, and then he stands up, but he's hunched over. And then he's looking at Omi, and Omi's kind of tearing up. And then he's, you know, gets his long curly ass finger and like touching her cheek and everything. And what I thought was cool about the Krampus character, like I said, you don't see what he looks like. And it's kind of a play on that. And the whole story was that he's the shadow of St. Nicholas. And with that being said, he wears a Santa suit, and he wears a Santa mask that's all deranged and shit like that. And, you know, it's a demon wearing a costume, essentially. And, you know, it was pretty cool how they put that all together. And the way they came up with that was they used all the various different variations of Krampus, and they put it all together as one. And this is the concept they came up with, where it has like the long skinny fingers like fucking Pumpkinhead. It had the big ass long horns that curled back like an actual reindeer. The fact that he was hunched over, and, you know, all these cool little aspects of it. And well, anyways, as he's looking at Omi, then he grabs his toy bag, he opens it up, you know, right in front of her face, and she looks down, and all his creepy toy helpers, they all like jump out and they grab her and everything. So Omi, you know, now she gets kidnapped with him. And then as they're going through, trying to make it into that pathway, that's when they start seeing that little trimmer monster in the snow. And that's when Tom's like, "You all need to go. It's right there. Just go. I love you." And, you know, they're saying their goodbyes and everything like that. And what I thought was a mistake on this, fully loaded shotguns, they only hold 8 rounds. He shot it off like 12 times. And so you see all these little underground monsters like coming after him, and he's shooting them. Boom, 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 boom. And he finally runs out of ammo, and then he's just like, "All right, they're going to take me." So they grab him and they take him. And as they're running up to the actual plow truck, Stevie gets in, and then Max gets in. And as they're getting in, then Linda gets taken, and then she's like, "No, save my kids, save my kids." They take Linda. And all of a sudden, Sarah, you know, she gets taken towards the end, and she's looking at Max, and she goes, "Max, I love you." And they took her. And I thought it was fucked up how that all went down. Like, oh shit, you know, both of those kids, they just lost their parents just like that. And then they're playing like this creepy ass Christmas music, you know, Silent Night in the background, and it's like, oh shit. Like, I'm getting trembles on my back right now thinking about that. And that's when, you know, Stevie was pretty much like, "Hey, we need to go, Max. Come on, start it up." And he's trying to start it. This is this old ass truck, you know, it's got 3 on the tree and everything. And they're all like, "Well, come on, you need to drive it, hurry up." And he goes, "I don't know how to drive this. All we have is hybrids." And I was dying at that because it's so fucking modernized for it. And then all of a sudden they see all the helpers. They come up to the actual plow truck and everything, and they're fucking with them, and they pull Stevie out. And then that's when he, Max fights back and everything, and he knocks one of them down. And, you know, one of them's in the ground, like on the snow, like, "Ah!" and then gets sucked out. Whoop! So Max gets out and he sees Krampus. Krampus comes out. Doom! And then, you know, he looks at him and everything like that. And then that's when he reaches inside his arm sack, and then he pulls out one of the bells that he has off his chains and drops it in with his note on the ground. And then you see it's part of the notes and everything. And Max says, this is not the Christmas that I wanted. And then Krampus looks at him and everything like that, and then Krampus fucking disappears. Then it shows later on that Max is still wandering through the snow, and he sees that there's like Krampus and all of his helpers over there in the corner, like prancing around and everything, fucking with all of his family members. And then that's when he's like, hey, and they're not turning around. Hey, asshole! Then Krampus turns around like all pissed, like, ooh. And then he goes, give me back my family! And he throws the bell and everything all the way down, and it lands like close to Krampus's feet, and then it like gets sucked into the snow. And then Krampus stomps his feet, and I guess like this volcano shit that pops out. And then all of a sudden, Max starts climbing up and everything, and he goes up to Krampus, and it looks like he's gonna hit him with a fucking crowbar. And then he's like, give me back my family. And then you see the helpers, they see Stevie right there, they're holding her on the edge. And it's funny, because, he's looking at Krampus, and he goes, I'm sorry, this is not what I wanted. And then Krampus, he's like looking at him like, what? And then he, touches his tear and everything like that, and he goes, I'm sorry. And this is where you get a good close-up view of Krampus, like how he looks. And then you find out, like I said, basically a demon in a Santa suit. Like if you look, like it shows a close-up of his eyes, he's got these demon-looking eyes. And, then he touches his, tear and everything, and he's looking down at it, and he's like, all right. And then all of a sudden, that's when all the elves are like, what the fuck is he gonna do? And then, he turns around to the elves, and he tells the elves to throw Stevie in the fucking lava pit. So they throw Stevie in the lava pit, and then that's when Max gets all pissed off, and then he picks up Max, and then hangs him over the lava pit, and then Max is like, I'm sorry, for what it's worth, I just wanted Christmas the way it used to be, I'm sorry. Then all of a sudden, he freaking drops Max inside the lava pit, and Max is like, ah! And just the way that they design that whole scene is very reminiscent to A Christmas Carol at the end of the movie, where you see the ghost of Christmas future. And, as Max is going in, the screen goes white, and then all of a sudden it shows Max is in bed. He wakes up from the nightmare and falls off his bed, and he's like, ugh, and at the same time, you see the Robot Chicken poster that's in the corner, and then you see Max, he looks out the window and everything, and it's regular snow, it's not blizzard and shit. And all of a sudden he comes downstairs, and he sees his whole family is all happy, and they're all talking to each other. And, you see Beth, where she's like, finally you woke up. You're the last one to wake up on Christmas. And that's when you see Howard, he's like, oh, we thought the Sugar Plum Fairies got to you, buddy. And it just ended up being a good Christmas, almost. In a way, it was very dreamlike for him. So, he goes and sees that everyone's okay. He goes and hugs his mom, hugs his dad, tells him Merry Christmas. And they're all like, oh, what's this for? He's like, oh, it's just Christmas, Mom. It's just Christmas, Dad. And then they're giving gifts and everything. You see Jordan, she opens up her present, and it ends up being like brass knucks, and she goes, hey, this is cool, and she goes, Maxi Pad, ooh. And they still fucked with him, but they were nice about it, right? And then Omi comes up, gives him hot chocolate, and she tells him in English, Merry Christmas, Max. And as that's going on, they give Max his present, and Max is opening up his present, and as he opens it up, it ends up being the bell from Krampus, and he pulls it out, and you can hear the jingle from the bells and everything, and everyone like stops talking, and they're all looking like right at the bell, looking at Max, and they're all looking at each other like, what the fuck? Did we all have the same dream? Like, it was a very eerie moment. You see Aunt Dorothy where she's like, it must be part of the hangover I have. I haven't been this hungover since the Pope died. And as they're all looking at each other, like still shocked, it shows a zoom out from the house through the window, and then their house is in a snow globe. And then you see that the snow globe is being put down, and it looks like it's Krampus's lair, where you see all these snow globes with all these homes in there. And it keeps backing away and everything, and it shows that it did happen, that Krampus did come and pay him a visit, and there's two ways of this ending, and I'll explain in a sec. But anyways, it backs all the way up, and you see his full lair with all these snow globes and everything. Then you see all the toys come out, and they start laughing, and they jump on the screen, and the movie ends. Awesome modern take on a Christmas horror film, honestly, it really was. And as I said, it's like a modern day Gremlins. But back to what I was saying on the ending, there's two versions of the ending that they never really confirmed. One is, Max learned his lesson and they all lived happily ever after, and Krampus is just watching over him, right? Another theory out there is saying since they all failed their test with Krampus, is the fact that, you know, Krampus, he has them reliving Christmas like this every day for the rest of their lives, and he has it in a snow globe to watch it, kind of like a haha, fuck you kind of thing. They never confirmed what was the actual ending of it. I mean, did everything go back to normal? Are they stuck in this Christmas hell for years? They never really described it. But see, that's what's cool about Michael Dougherty films, is that he always leaves a lot of open-ended, like, stories to it. He did the same thing with Trick or Treat, where, you know, it was all these Halloween stories happening all at once, and you kind of had to piece it together of, like, what goes where. And same thing with Krampus, but Krampus was done in a way where, you know, the ending could go two different ways. There was a lot of buzz about this film, where people didn't know if it was going to go for a realistic approach, if it was going to go a comedic approach. I'm glad that they kind of went with, like, the dark comedy with it, because, I mean, you make it kooky, you make it accessible for everybody to enjoy, you know, from all ages. I mean, from teenagers, I mean, you know, this is a modern day where, you know, it's a scary film, but not as scary. I mean, I was a kid, I used to watch Gremlins, so I mean, that was nothing compared to this. And, you know, kids today, I can see watching this film. It's kind of like a Christmas horror film, and it's pretty cool, you know? Originally, though, when this film was supposed to come out, it was supposed to come out Thanksgiving weekend of 2015, because this film was released in 2015. And they decided, no, we're not going to release it on Thanksgiving weekend. We're going to wait until a couple weeks later. And the reason why is because they want to release it right at the same time that they do, like, Krampus festivals out there in Europe and stuff. And I thought that was another cool little week. I was like, oh shit, you know, they kept it very true to this film. The only thing is, though, this film was supposed to be originally rated as rated R. The only problem is, though, is that the studio that was doing it, they said, whoa, hold on a second. We don't want to do a rated R on a Christmas film. And the reason why they didn't want to do it rated R was because they didn't want to have the controversy with it being like Black Christmas or Silent Night, Deadly Night. They wanted something that's going to be, you know, pushing that envelope a little bit, but at the same time, it's like, does it go over that edge? You know what I mean? But I mean, even at PG-13, this was a great film because, I mean, you know, if you had to make this rated R, I mean, it would take the fun out of it, I think, because, you know, less is more. The fact where it shows Beth where she gets, you know, eaten by the Jack-in-the-Box, that was cool because they didn't show it. You know, they left everything to the imagination, which makes it even scarier. When you're talking something iconic as Krampus, you can't just go and make, like, an actual character that's completely something different. Because if you do that, then everyone's gonna bitch about it. And, you know, the studio knew about that. So they said, okay, if we're gonna make our own take on Krampus, let's do a little bit of everything in there that ties into the story. So they tied in with the hooves, they tied in with the horns, and then they tied in with the fact that some depictions show that he wears a Santa suit. And then they didn't want to show his face, because if they show his face, there's different various, you know, drawings and stories of how Krampus actually looks. So they decided that they were going to make it so he wears like a plastic, like, Santa Claus face, but you can still see his eyes, you can see his tongue, you can see his, like, crazy crooked hands. In a way, I think if they would have actually showed Krampus, like, in full demon form, I think they would have kind of went the route with Pumpkinhead. And if they would have did it like Pumpkinhead, that still would have been badass. Like, oh shit, looks like Pumpkinhead. But it was pretty cool how they did it, you know? But overall, hope you all didn't end up in that naughty list and you're all enjoying your holiday seasons, everything from Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and even the New Year. It's finally gonna be the end of 2020, finally. So hope you're all having fun and safe, and I will catch y'all next time, as always.
Bow down to